The Archangel Chronicles by Raymond, copyright 2023, all rights reserved. Chapter 20, Through the Eagle's Eye. All through the spring and summer, the Massagetae host continued the eastward migration across the steppes, pasturing the now enormous flocks of goats, sheep, cattle, oxen, camels, and of course, above all, horses. Day by day, this great procession continued, led always by the queen in front of the funeral wagon bearing the body of Bartatua. The ranks of the horde continued to swell. At each crossroad and streamside settlement, pauses were made to allow the tribesmen, women, and children to revere the great king. Summer turned to fall, and the air in the evenings began to chill. A camp was struck near the banks of another great river, the Amu Darya, known to the ancients as the Oxus, at a place where it emptied into the Aral Sea. Tonight this place became a teeming city of tents, yurts, and other temporary structures. Sod was cut and piled up for walls to surround the encampment, with guards posted at the gates. Scumaxa and Prototheus organized the warriors and the herdsmen into teams, and these spread out far and wide to gather immense amounts of fodder to sustain the livestock over the coming winter. Cattle were slaughtered, and stores of cured and dried meats were laid up. Fish were plentiful in the shallow sea, and these were hung on racks, salted and dried, to help feed the growing multitude. During the days leading up to this encampment, I had been deprived of my trusty friend, bodyguard, and Ursat's captor, Scarus. He had been given the task of organizing the growing body of warriors. The Roman mind had a genius for organization that was not lost on the Scythians, and Scarus's skill as a centurion and primus pilatus in the greatest army of the ancient world was much in demand. Abu, as well, was conscripted to his duties as Axia's cup-bearer. He was her shadow, watching and serving her intently. Axia had become particularly fond of the two ferrets, Atlas and Calliope, and in the evenings, Abu amused her by having them perform tricks. And so it was that during the long, hot days of summer leading up to this winter encampment, I was often left by myself for many hours. This gave me the time to brood on things, which wasn't necessarily good for me. My thoughts went back to my life in Alexandria with Sophia. I ached for her presence, her touch, her voice, now so far away and unreachable. It seemed impossible that I would ever see her again. Axia was intent on keeping me here. She intended to make me her husband. Although I knew in my heart of hearts that this would never work, she was fixed on it. Axia could be dangerous if defied. I needed to find a solution. One day, lost in my thoughts, I heard, as if in a distance, someone calling my name. I looked up, and there, beside me, riding on a horse, was Raphael of the great eyes, wrapped as always in his gray hooded robe. "I see that you are suffering, Adam. The path that you have chosen is not easy." I replied, "My longing may never cease, and the journey is long, but it is tolerable with you here, my friend," I said, reaching over to him. "If I wasn't astride this horse, I would kneel before you. And I would lift you up, for you must not worship me," he said, smiling tenderly. "Raphael, my friend and guide, I know you serve the Most High, and that you will pass on my thoughts and prayers to him. But you have not just appeared here by my side to have a nice chat and make me feel better, although, of course, you do both. I have come here in answer to your longing, my son," he said, reaching across the distance between us and grasping my forearm. "A solution to your dilemma with the Vasilisa will present itself. But there is great danger ahead. The evil one, the enemy, senses the quickening in this world. Great events are in motion, and you will be in the center of them. You must prepare yourself. You must watch the Vasilisa. She will come to a crossroads and stand at the abyss. The queen will have to choose between satisfying her hatred or taking another path. I see great peril for her. Her thirst for revenge could lead her into the great darkness of the enemy that consumes all hope. You will be there with her at that moment. You will be her guide. You must help her to choose wisely." "I dare not fail," I said. "There is more, my friend," he replied. He turned his gray hooded head and stared into the distance for a long time. Then he turned back to me. His grip of my forearm tightened. "You must also look to Abu. He is on the verge of change. He will become a man, and the time will soon come where he will be taken away from you for a while. The Holy Spirit will come and will soar high over the earth. He will be given a mission, a calling. You must help him to become that which he was meant to be. One of my order, far greater than myself, will become his guide." "These are riddles to me, Raphael. Can't you be more specific? Particularly about what, where, when, and why?" Raphael smiled, gray eyes twinkling. "Adam, if I gave you a detailed map, what would be the good of that? You wouldn't have to choose. You wouldn't have to think about the meaning of your existence. You wouldn't have to plan your journey and find your own path. The Most High has given humankind the gift of free will. There are strict rules imposed upon us so that we may not directly interfere." "Something like that," laughed Raphael. "My order is prohibited from interfering with the natural progression of things. There are, however, a few notable times when, for reasons known to the Most High, he will directly interfere with humankind's affairs, usually to counter some act of the enemy. But Adam, you will be blessed. You shall witness the day when the forces of heaven will touch the earth, and nothing will ever be the same." I now became aware of another presence, someone riding beside me opposite Raphael. I snapped out of my thoughts and then looked to my right. There, looking at me intently as we rode along, was Prince Arsalion of the Roxolani, mounted on his large black horse. "Adam the Wise," he said, bowing his head slightly and putting his hand to his breast in greeting. "I have been seeking to speak to you alone for these many days. Is this a good time?" I looked back to my left. Raphael had disappeared. I looked back to Arsalion. "Of course, my prince," I said, bowing slightly and returning the gesture. I would welcome your company on this journey. You are talking as if someone was riding beside you. You spoke of riddles. I did not wish to intrude, but who were you speaking to? No, my prince. I was in a deep meditation. Sometimes I speak my thoughts aloud. You are not disturbing me. Arsalion was a handsome figure on his tall black horse. He was dressed comfortably without his armor, in an elegant blue silk caftan with high collars. He rode bareheaded, his long golden hair shoulder length, flowing with the wind as he rode. Here was our Thor again, I thought. Then another thought crossed my mind. With some careful planning and skill, here was someone I could introduce as a worthy suitor to she who is worthy of armor, hopefully in substitution for myself. I've got to make this work, I thought. He may be my ticket to freedom. These thoughts passed in an instant. Arsalion was talking to me again. It was time to focus on what he was saying. Adam the Wise, you must know that at night the bards sing of your exploits. They recite your epic poem with the lyre, the flute, and drum by the campfires. You are a hero among heroes. I had to see for myself. But here I see you, flesh and blood, just a man. And forgive me, my lord, but you do not appear to be a great warrior. I feel I must come to know you better. I was pleased by his directness. No guile here, I thought. Epic poems, songs, heroes? Surely not. As you can see, I am but a man who can barely ride this horse. What you see before you, my prince, is indeed nothing more than a man, a healer of sorts, but no hero or god. But pray, tell me, for I am curious, what do the poets sing of me? Is it good or ill? Oh, it is all good, my lord, and all of them sing of Adam the Wise, the great shaman, and his cupbearer Abukar, from the land of the pharaohs. They revel in how you saved the cupbearer from a dragon. They sing of how you healed the boatman whose throat had been slit by pirates and brought them back to life to restore them to their families. They praise your healing powers among the people of the great city of Alexander, and they recite a story of how the gods tested you with a bite of a giant cobra and then raised you back to life. They laud how you were sent by the gods to bring she who is worthy of armor back to life from the underworld through curtains of ice and fire. They sing of the flight of the phoenix and how the queen won back the treasure for her father's funeral. They sing of how the queen trapped you in the belly of a great fish so that you could be delivered to her. They tell the story of how you tricked the bandits who stole the treasure and conjured a spell to turn the gold into smooth stones, confounding them, saving the queen, and how you turned the gold into salt and back into gold again when the queen crossed the great river where it meets the Caspian Sea. They sing of how you speak of messengers from the deep blue sky and lead the people of a great shaman to she who is worthy of armor, to defeat her enemies and restore the house of Bartatua, and how you will smite them with your thunderbolts and clouds of smoke. All of these things, Adam the Wise, they sing of you. We rode in silence for a few minutes. I looked at Arsalion. And what about you, my prince? Do you believe these things to be true? Arsalion gazed into the distance. True or not, my lord, these deeds are lauded, and they are believed, and so these things have power with the people. Does it matter if they are true? I stopped my horse, reached over, and placed my hand on his shoulder. My prince, some are true to a point. They are myths, but in some sense, there's truth behind all myth. There are embellishments, to be sure, but I am no god, nor a hero, nor a shaman. I am a man who has some knowledge of things not yet known to this world. I am a healer. Your queen was poisoned, and I found an antidote. The dragon was a pirate. As for the boatman, well, that was indeed a miracle, but not by me. And the same with the cobra. I was healed by a friend. I did not travel here in the belly of a great fish, but in a carriage. As for the gold, well, it's true enough. We did make it disappear, seemingly, but as a trick, not by magic. Arsalion smiled. My lord, I like the way it was sung by the bards. I say we should leave it to them. Arsalion gestured towards Axia, riding at the front of the host, leading it ever forward. It is also said, my lord, around the campfires, that she who is worthy of armor will wed you, her shaman. Is this true, my lord? Here was my opening. Time to play matchmaker. I needed to plant a seed. She has made it known to me that this is her wish. But my prince, she is young, she is beautiful, she is strong-willed. While I am willing to serve her, I do not think that the higher powers above wish this. I turned and looked directly at Arsalion. There are many worthy suitors in this camp. Perhaps even a prince of the Roxolani? I mused. I confess to you, my lord, that this is what I desire, said Arsalion, but she does not favor me with attention. Ah, Arsalion, my prince, hear what I say. Do not be dissuaded. You have already performed a great service to her and her people. A union between the Roxolani and the Massagetae would be a powerful one. The young queen is unskilled in the ways of love, and I do not think she yet knows her own heart. But I have seen her casting sideways glances at you. She invited you to dinner in the evenings, and I have seen her looking at you with interest. Her heart is a fierce one. Have patience, and be present to her. I tell you that the time is not far off when she will need you, and you will perform deeds to win her that will be sung by the bards at the campfires. Arsalion nodded. You have given me much to think of, my lord. I thank you for your counsel. There is no issue between us, nor should there ever be. I looked over the vast rolling steppes under fair skies stretching into the distance. These lands are most beautiful, my prince. The sight of them takes my breath away. But they belong to the peoples of the steppes, to the Massagetae, the Saka, the Roxolani. These are not my lands. My heart's desire is far away. When my mission here is done, I will return there, I think, with the blessing of the queen, and perhaps a new king as well. And so now we are in the encampment by the river Oxus, where it meets the Aral Sea. A great temporary palace was constructed of wood and felt. Beautiful carpets were taken out and unrolled, and curtains hung to create a great banquet hall with a roaring hearth in the center, smoke rising through a hole in the canopy. A feast was declared for the occasion. I took Theron aside and told him confidentially about my talk with Arsalion. Theron was most enthusiastic. He seized me with a great bear hug, kisses me on each cheek, and released me, dancing about the tent like a madman. Adam, you are wise indeed, he shouted in joy, throwing his hands high. You are more than wise. You're more than clever. Of course. Why did I not see this? Uniting the house of Bartatua with the Roxolani. It's brilliant. And so, my Greek friend, you must help me kindle the fire of love between them. You must whisper in her ear how handsome and desirable this prince would be, and how the other women swoon over him. Talk up his deeds, his prowess to her and her brothers. If you do this, I will forgive your part in my kidnapping. A feast was decreed to mark the end of the year and the coming of winter. A high table was set up in the banquet hall. Theron arranged for the queen to be seated next to Arsalion, and was joined by her brothers Scumax and Prothothesus. Over the long dinner feast, Theron had arranged for minstrels and a bard who played the ballad of Adam the Wise, and another poem newly dedicated to the Prince of the Roxolani, a friend of the Massagetae, who brought the body of the great King Bartatua back to his daughter. As this was being sung, I did indeed notice Axia casting sideways glances to the handsome golden-haired prince. Well, I thought, this was encouraging. We finally got the prince on her radar screen. I felt things were looking up. The banquet was in full swing, fueled by copious amounts of kumis, that alcoholic drink made from fermented mare's milk, and other Greek wine supplied courtesy of Theron. Scumaxus stood up and clapped his hands loudly 3 times after the ballads were finished. The crowd felt silent. Scumaxa leapt over the table and stood before the fire, turning as he spoke for all in the banquet hall to hear. Warriors, herdsmen, hunters, comrades all, hear what she who is worthy of armor has now decreed. For now, my people, our pilgrimage is ended. We rest on fertile lands where we shall shelter from the winter. In the spring we shall move south to confront Artaxes, accursed be his name, he said as he turned and spat into the fire. We have sent our scouts far and wide to find no trace of his hosts, but we must be prepared. Our great queen has therefore decreed that this host, all of the warriors, huntsmen, and hunters, shall assemble for a great hunt. The hunt! The hunt! A chant began which gathered momentum through the crowd and filled the hall. Scumaxa clapped his hands again and called the assembly back to order. Now the queen herself stood and walked slowly forward around the table, accompanied by her priestesses. She stood in front of the host and gestured for all to sit down. Axia turned to look back to her chair. Abu, the cupbearer, was standing behind it, as he had throughout the entire banquet, attending to the queen. "Cupbearer," she commanded, "come forward." Abu, uncertain about what was happening, came forward and stood before the queen. Then he knelt and looked up, his face aglow. "Cupbearer, it is the time of the great hunt. You are of age. It is time for you to leave behind the things of childhood and choose your spirit, as is the custom of our people." She came around and stood behind him, hands on his shoulders. "Bring the spirits," she commanded. From the darkness at the side of the hall, there emerged a figure of a tall, robust warrior, dressed in a bearskin cloak, with a bear's head covering his own. The man was leading an enormous black bear, muzzled and lumbering forward. They came before the queen and bowed. "Ursus of the clan of the bear, welcome," said the queen. Following Ursus came the fully arrayed Scythian warrior, magnificent in his gold scale armor and a tall peaked helm, leading a white mustang. Brother Julaki of the clan of the Stallion, welcome. Another warrior appeared, dressed in the antlers and skins of stag, leading a very large, muscular red deer with an impressive rack of antlers. Father Sekundak of the clan of the deer, welcome. Then followed a tall, lithe, athletic-looking warrior, dressed with the headgear and skins of a snow leopard. Brother Vadas of the clan of the leopard, welcome. Finally there came forth a warrior, dressed from head to foot in eagle feathers, with a helmet affixed with eagle's wings, and bearing a necklace of eagle talons around his neck. On his right arm, gloved in heavy buckskin right up to the shoulder, stood an eagle, head covered with a leather hood and talons gripping his master's arm. Father Zephros of the clan of the eagle, welcome. Axia, gently grasping Abu by the shoulders, and guided from one of these paired warriors and animals to the other, paused for a few moments in front of each of them. Then she turned Abu to face her, looking deep into his eyes in a most solemn way. Cupbearer, boy that you are, you shall now leave the place of your childhood at the time of the hunt. You will leave this place and follow your spirit guide to one of these clans, and there learn the lore of the land to prepare your place amongst the warriors of the Massagetae. So you must now choose which of these spirits you will follow. This is the way of our people. Axia looked to the cage where the two ferrets were sitting. First, you must set aside your two childhood companions. This is a sacrifice you must make to begin the transition to what you were meant to become. So now, Cupbearer, do you freely give up your ferrets, Calliope and Atlas? Alarm shot across Abu's face, beaded with sweat and fear. Reluctantly, he went to the table where the little ferret cage was. He lifted it up, tears in his eyes, and turned back to the queen. But my Vasilisa, he cried, what shall become of them? That is for you to decide, Cupbearer. You may set them free, or if you choose, give them to the keeping of the host. Abu looked for a long time with sad eyes at his ferrets, who seemed to sense something about the gravity of the occasion. They began to dart back and forth inside their cage anxiously. Abu looked to Axia and held up the cage, kneeling as he did so. My Vasilisa, will you take them? I had always seen Axia before now as a stern and driven young woman, always in command, always in control of her emotions. But for the first time, I saw a change. Her haughty face melted. Her eyes glistened as she raised Abu to his feet and bent down to his level to face him. She caressed his cheek and whispered tenderly, Ah, young one, how sad it is that you must do this. How bittersweet that you must leave your childhood friends behind. But you give me a great gift, the greatest you could. You are a noble spirit, my child. I accept your friends and am honored. I will embrace them as my own. Then she kissed Abu gently on his forehead. Abu handed the cage to the queen. She opened it, and immediately the two ferrets jumped out, leapt to her outstretched arms, and scampered up to her neck and settled around it like a living, breathing fur collar, hiding their little heads from sight. It was a magical moment. Now Abu turned to the eagle. He crept closer to the great bird. The eagle's handler removed its leather hood. The eagle spread its great wings 6 feet or more in length and thrust her head forward. Lustrous gold feathers gleamed on its back and head in the flickering firelight. The eagle would not take her eyes off Abu. They were mesmerizing. She opened her beak and issued forth a series of piercing "Eo, Eo, Eo." Abu stood utterly transfixed. He stared into the eagle's eyes. He felt a shock, an anointing coursing through his body, burning white-hot through his veins. He felt a prickling in his fingers as if lightning was near him. All consciousness of his surroundings fell away, replaced by images of flying at high altitudes, seeing far into the distance, freedom, strength, power, courage, and grace. Here was loyalty, truth, and honor in its most pure form. Here was a sense of surrendering oneself to the winds of destiny. The magic of the great bird's presence before him and in him was more than overwhelming. For what seemed like an eternity, he stood, transfixed by those magnificent eyes, until the eagle's handler replaced the leather hood back onto its head, breaking the spell. The eagle settled back on its handler's arms and rested. Abu now turned and looked at the queen. "My Vasilisa," he said, "I choose the eagle." Axia placed her hand on Abu's head and smiled. "Cupbearer, you have chosen well. Now you must go to the clan of the eagle." Music for Chapter 20. Unis ex disciplinius meus. Twins music, Dandelion Field. And the following pieces are all from Epidemic Sound. Serenity's Reality by August Wilhelmsson. To Valhalla by John Abbott. Kyrie eleison by Silver Maple. The Way of the Warrior by Yi Nantiro. The Portal by Bonnie Grace. Mystic Mountain by John Bajark. Our Final Mission by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. The Wind Blows by Spectacles, Wallet and Watch. For What Is Right by Trevor Kowalski. Hunting in the Wild by Sight of Wonders. The Archangel Chronicles by Raymond. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.